Hi there. So I wanted to talk to you today because I've been reflecting on the appointments of Mike Spencer and Hana McKenna to the board by the 7 remaining board of directors after the resignation of our board president, John Hannock, and the vice president, Michael Smolensky. So I've been thinking curiously about these appointments and trying to analyze why they selected these candidates or non-candidates because they weren't running, they were just asked to do it. I had in one of my earlier videos talked about how, to me, the 2 resignations were acts of protest against the other 7 directors and management for how they wanted to handle the public safety investigation. And I had called on members to not accept an appointment to the board, to join as the act of resistance and protest against their handling of this matter and their lack of transparency. So I've been reflecting on why I think the board selected them, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you to see what you think. And if you agree or don't agree, if you agree, you can give me a thumbs up. If you don't agree, you can put it in the comments. But I would like us to have this space to critically think and analyze and just go deeper. You know, that's all I'm asking for, is to go deeper and not look at things so surface level. We can look at their appointments as, oh, they're great people in the community, everybody loves them, that's great for them, and just go about our day. But for me, who studies human behavior and likes to look at patterns, I have some thoughts on this that I want to share with you. So, I've heard good things about Mike Spencer because he is the person that I do not know. I've heard that he owns and operates Ryan's Deli, and I don't know him, and I've only eaten at Ryan's Deli a few times, and they have very good sandwiches, so thank you very much, Mike Spencer. But I don't know him at all. What I was told, that he's been on committees. I think he might have even chaired a committee, but he's never been on the board that I'm aware of, so this would be his first time on the board. Hana McKenna, many of you would likely know because she is the USPS contractor for Hemlock Farms and runs our mailroom with her husband, Charlie McKenna. So Hana would be equally loved by most of the members. I don't know if everyone likes the mailroom, but these 2 people, both according to the board, would think that they are very good candidates to appoint, because you have to think about what's been going on. For the last 5 to 6 months, there's been a lot of heat and pressure on management and on the board, hence 2 resignations because of this public safety investigation. It's my understanding that people were calling for a community manager to be fired and for people who work at public safety to be fired. Clearly that has not happened. We're still seeing Sean in his Friday FaceTime videos, and to my understanding and knowledge, there's been no changes at public safety. So this board of 7 directors has decided to address this investigation as they see fit by not, hiring or firing or doing anything that we can see. They've not offered any transparency. So what do you do by bringing in 2 well-respected, involved contributors to our community? Well, number one, neither of them are experienced with being on the board, so they can't possibly know all the ins and outs of voting on things. So it's more likely that they will just go along with the other more senior members of the board, people who have been on there for a few years, and just go along with their votes. So that's number one. They are likely selecting people who will just listen, be pleasant, and probably feel very honored to have been selected, because who doesn't want good attention and positive reinforcement and approval? So to be selected by the board of directors to serve on the board, they probably feel very esteemed by that. So why would they want to say no, I guess? So this is a plus plus for both parties because the board thinks that they're a good fit. But more importantly, I think that the board will feel that by putting these two on the board, they're going to get all of the heat and focus off of them and away from this public safety investigation and away from the accountability of what went on under our community managers' management and leadership over at public safety. So if they install these two nice community members, everyone can go back to being happy nowadays. Anybody? Brave New World? But anyway, the other thing I want you to consider now with regard to Hana, we have to really think critically why they select certain people. Now, Hana is a contractor for HFCA as the operator of the mailroom. Now, people who are employed by HFCA and are residents or members of the community are not permitted to be on the board, and they're not allowed to sit on committees. So we have several staff members, to my knowledge, that's what I was told. To my knowledge, we have several people on staff that also live here, reside here, are members. It's my understanding that they cannot serve on the board or sit on a committee because it's a conflict of interest. What is a conflict of interest? It is an ethical conflict. Hana just got seated on the PLUA committee, that's the Planning, Land Use, and Architecture Committee, in August. To my knowledge, that's the first committee she's served on, but she's been a regular guest for at least the last 2 years. Why? Because she has been very actively involved in the mailroom expansion project. Now, as members, we just voted on one of the propositions in July to expand the mailroom. Hana was very central and critical, obviously, in telling the board and that committee what her needs were as the operator of the mailroom. So all of the members who voted for, I believe, upwards of $750,000 to expand the mailroom that she is very proud of. Do you not think that that is a conflict of interest in the same manner that somebody on staff would have a conflict of interest? Because now she's a contractor of HFCA in a way, not just USPS, but she will be a director voting on certain things that may benefit the mailroom. So why the board, which if you think about it, the most senior board member is Phil, and he's only in like his 4th or 5th year. And if you ask me my opinion of him, it's not a good opinion, but that's another day. The only real senior member of the board of directors was John Hana, and he's now gone. So gone is all of the knowledge of that history. So you have many new directors who don't have the working experience of being on the board and understanding how things should run and operate in Hemlock Farms. So I think it's a conflict of interest. But more importantly, I want to share something with you about observations I've had of Hana and something that came up with public safety in 5 months, 6 months ago. So in September, the PLUA committee, which is chaired by Alan Sweetman, asked for the code enforcement officer from public safety, his name is Chris Searsha, to speak and present at PLUA. Now, why would they need that? That's really a public safety issue, and there is a public safety committee. It's called PHSS, and they had him approved to present to PLUA to talk about code enforcement because that is something that they're very interested in, to enforce, properties that might look unkempt, or architecture rules and building rules and permits. So Chris came and spoke, and during that meeting, the people on the committee on PLUA actually came out of their lane and said, you need help. We need more code enforcers. So they actually made a motion and brought it to the board that month to hire another full-time and another part-time code enforcement officer. Now, mind you, Chris Searsha's position as code enforcement officer was only funded about 2 years ago. We've never had a dedicated code enforcement officer. This would cost you all as members more money. Just so you know, the dues would go up. One of the biggest parts of our budget is staff and payroll. You have to pay your staff, you have to give their benefits, insurance, things like that, workers' compensation. So that's the biggest part of our budget. So the actual PLUA committee went out of their lane, brought to the board a motion, and this was with John Hana, who should have known better, but this was manipulative in my perspective, to not bring such a motion to the board. But they brought the motion to the board to hire more staff. Never checked with Bill Durando as the department director or the community manager. So we have this board meeting in like September. They bring this motion and the board of directors is like, why would we need that? So basically Bill Durando was asked, do we need that? And he said, no, we don't need that. Chris is doing fine, and other officers back each other up to do code enforcement and permits and inspections. And also our community manager said, this is my wheelhouse, this is my lane. I look at who needs staffing, this isn't appropriate. I stood up and I said at members' time, this is totally out of line for the PLUA committee to be making recommendations about staffing for public safety when, number one, we have a public safety committee, and number two, that's up to our community manager and the department directors to discuss, not a committee. Hana stood up after all the directors voted not to do anything with that because it was ludicrous, and they said this is the community manager's responsibility to assess hiring needs. Hana stood up and said, I think Chris Searsha needs help and that he should have more code enforcement officers. I mean, I got up again and I spoke and I said, that's just literally inappropriate for anybody to be making that recommendation other than our community manager who assesses what services we need as community members. So the board remembers this. I guarantee you the board remembers that Hana supported public safety, supported Chris Searsha, and wanted to put more funding into public safety. So I think that they saw her as an ally of public safety, especially since there's so much heat on public safety. So this is why I'm asking you to critically think about why certain people would be appointed to the board. You can't just look at things surface level and say, oh, they're good people, everybody's happy nowadays, everything's gonna be fine. No, this is your money, and they're appointing people that they think will put on a better face for the board and be supportive of public safety. And again, that's another distraction from what's really going on with staff and who we pay to be employed by our dues money. So I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I want you to critically think about why they chose them. And I wish them the best of luck, but I also want you to think and give me your feedback.